Could have been better.
And welcome to the Movie Night Podcast, episode 12. I'm Alex Law.
Man, you smell. Oh, I'm Jake Law. Hi.
Yeah, I do smell. And this week, we're going to talk, when should a franchise that's been going and going should just die?
Or if you're the Mummy movie, just die right away.
Exactly. And also our movie of the week, which was War for the Planet of the Apes.
And a review of a little movie that came out last weekend. That we both loved, called Black Panther.
Yes, we're going to review Black Panther. But before that, let's get to news.
You stay classy, San Diego. I'm Ron. Fuck yourself.
Okay, well, first of all, we're going to talk about a couple of trailers that everyone's been talking about. Both teaser trailers, one for Venom and one for The Incredibles 2.
Well,
which one?
Venom, a trailer. I mean,
yeah, quote unquote.
It's a joke of a trailer. But
which one do you want to start with? Let's start with Venom.
Yeah, that's fine. I have almost zero impressions on it personally because they showed us almost nothing, and I know a lot of people are ranting. Oh, it's a teaser. It's not supposed to show you anything. It's like, well, a teaser is supposed to show you just enough to get you hyped. There was nothing to hype us over.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because it's another superhero movie with a beloved character. They feel like that'll just get you hyped no matter what.
And here's the thing, even if they didn't show us anything, they could have made it look a little better, because some of that editing was Resident Evil style, like, really amateur, like 2004, like, speed up, like when he's in the hospital shaking his head. That was so stupid looking.
CGI. It reminded me of the shitty Mummy trailer.
It has Sony written all over it, I'm telling you now, so I have almost no confidence in it, personally.
I find it funny because, let's face it, personal feelings aside, many fans weren't happy with the way Venom was treated in Spider-Man 3, and now they're not even bothering with Spider-Man this time. They're just jumping right into Venom. Spider-Man's not even going to be in this movie.
Here's the thing about Venom is that his whole identity, all his powers are based around Spider-Man. He's supposed to be an counterpart, basically. He's supposed to be a counterpart to Spider-Man.
He's practically evil Spider-Man.
Yeah, so when you take Spider-Man out of the equation, it just becomes nonsensical for me personally.
Yeah.
Venom is almost always featured in only exclusively Spider-Man games, Spider-Man content, period. I know he has his own comics, but for the most part, he can't exist without Spider-Man.
He came from Spider-Man.
They're literally counterparts.
Then again, so did the Punisher. He came from a Spider-Man comic originally.
That's true, but I mean,
there
was enough of a person there to...
I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think the Punisher's a more interesting character than Venom, because I can't help but feel like Venom is... Okay, I'm not going to act like I'm not like an expert on the comics or anything, but I can't help but feel Venom gets the hype he does because he looks cool.
Yeah, and sounds cool, depending. I mean, he's gotten a lot of great voice acting along the years.
But especially with, I think you're right, is Tom Hardy, do you think, is a good choice? I think... Well, because I'll be honest, I was never one of those people who was bothered by Topher Grace in Spider-Man 3.
No. I think we'll have to see.
And Tom Hardy's a good actor.
Based on what I've seen of the comics, he strikes me as unique. I think a lot of people are really fascinated mostly by Venom's origin story about becoming hopelessly obsessed with the symbiote. I think that's the most intriguing, to me, the most intriguing part of Venom and Eddie Brock as a character. So based on what I've seen, he's a brute, tough guy, and that's why Venom is so muscular. But Tom Hardy, I don't know if it would have been my first choice, but Tom Hardy's really, really proved himself.
Yeah.
He's really good at original characters, like his original, like he was Mad Max, but it was his own original rendition of the character.
Same goes for Bane, because I know a lot of people hated his take on Bane. I didn't, but and I like that ever since then. When he's the image you get when you think of Bane now, in his voice.
Yeah, some people don't care for that. I just hope that Sony doesn't like try to overplay how they want him to act, you know? Like, I hope they just let Tom Hardy be Tom Hardy. Which, as long as they don't make him go, well, hey, I'm Eddie Brock. And if they did that, then I would be raising some eyebrows.
Perhaps they're wondering why someone would make a Venom film before making a Spider-Man movie.
No shit.
But, That's the thing in question, because Homecoming was a good movie, but you could still feel a bit of the Sony hand grubbingness.
Yeah, just sitting in the corner, just with their greedy paws.
But they had the Marvel people do what they do best and make a decent movie.
Yeah.
Now this is all Sony, and if that makes you think that this is ready for disaster, it definitely has a better chance of doing it.
Yeah, but based on the trailer alone, like, there's just not enough there to give us any thoughts, period. Like,
Agreed.
there's like I know it's meant to generate hype, but you have to give us a tiny little speck of hype and not just throw random scenes in there. And again, they could have just made it look better, and I get it, it's a teaser, but I'm not like jumping to conclusions or anything. I'm just saying, based on what I've seen, I don't have too much confidence for it, but I feel like once an official trailer drops, we'll, have a better understanding.
Yeah, I agree. And now we'll get on to The Incredibles 2. Now, this trailer did show what we assume is a good chunk of the plot,
Yep.
and I actually think it looks kind of interesting.
Yeah, me too. I saw it a couple times, and I think it shares a similar tone of the first one. It shares similar animation of the first one. It did a really good job of bringing you back into the feeling that the first one gave you about, like, superheroes being extinct and all that. From what I understand, Elastigirl has to go out and fight crime now. They want her and not him, which I guess is kind of a rotation of the first one.
It seems like it might be just a rotation of the first one, but to be fair, I feel like that plays into the... because the first one is not just a movie about a superhero family, it's also a really relatable movie about, like, going through a midlife crisis and, like, wanting to relive the glory days and not adapting well to mundane life. And
exactly.
Now we're living in an age where, yes, women are empowered, and, and that's what I feel like this movie's going to play into.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that personally, because I like Elastigirl a lot.
Yeah, she was a great character.
I think she's a great design. I like Holly Hunter's the voice.
Yeah, that's something else to say. They got a lot of the voices back, and the kid they got, because the kid who originally played Dash is obviously grown up by now.
Yeah.
But the kid they got to replace him sounds just like him, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know why they took so long.
That's the question. The fact that we got a trilogy of Cars plus 2 spin-offs, and now we're just getting Incredibles 2.
Exactly, but hey, it's coming. I'm not afraid. I can't help but feel like a lot of the target audience for this is going to be people who grew up with the first one. Maybe not too many, like, little kids, Yeah,
because I was younger when the first one...
I could be wrong, but I was, I want to say 10... like 13 or something when I saw the first one.
I was really young when I saw the first one.
So, I mean, when you waste enough time, it's like eventually gonna catch up.
But I don't see that happening here. This is obviously a more hyped sequel than Monsters University.
Oh, I've seen so many people
like
just where's this happening in this, and it's like, wow, it took you this long.
And the fact that Brad Bird is back in the directing chair, I feel like it definitely has a better chance of succeeding.
Yeah, he's proved himself when it comes to Pixar. And
hopefully he doesn't make another Tomorrowland.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll see. He's treated Pixar well.
Yeah, and they've treated him well.
Yeah, so I'm definitely hyped for that. That one was good. That's how you do a first trailer properly, in my opinion.
Agreed. Now we have, we avoided talking like Star Wars like hell last episode, but now I feel like we have to jump in. Not too much, because like I said, it could take up this entire episode if we wanted it to. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about recently the directors of a handful of Game of Thrones episodes, if not the majority of them, are coming into Star Wars.
Yeah, I think... I'm one of those weirdos that actually loved Last Jedi.
Yeah, I thought Last Jedi, I don't care what anyone says, it's fantastic.
I think it was a step in the right direction, because while the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, they were, while they were really, like, they handled the characters and all that really well.
Not the prequel trilogy.
There was still a childlike fantasy to those elements, you know, like there's still
Yeah.
a children element to it. But I think we're stepping in that direction where they're ready to, you know, tackle a little more drama, a little more seriousness, a little more
Yeah.
commentary in general, which I definitely saw in Last Jedi. You know, there's a lot of different themes rolling around there that, I mean, as much as I love the original trilogy.
There's definitely in there, but it was mostly about, like, at least the original the original Star Wars. It was mostly about paying tribute to adventure serials, whereas
Exactly.
you're right. I think that'll lead into our Black Panther review about Disney tackling more serious subjects. But for now, I want to talk about how the fact that so far we've had 3 new Star Wars movies. You know, one is J.J. Abrams coming in and doing what he wants. One is Gareth Edwards coming in and doing what he wants. For the most part, it still felt like it was his movie, even though there was some tampering.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, Rian Johnson has come in and done whatever he wants. So the fact that they're just getting people to make these movies as rigorously as they want, I am all for. It's because we've complained about Marvel making like assembly line studio movies. This is the opposite of that, and I feel like that's what we want. With that said, I can see people getting afraid that they might be burnt out on Star Wars.
Oh man, man, I absolutely. I mean, we'll get into the topic of discussion later, but I definitely think they're taking Star Wars too far. But I'm actually really excited for this Game of Thrones news because the creators do a really good job of taking a fantasy world like Westeros, a very nice fantasy world, and they make it feel real, like a realistic environment. Like, you got all these dragons roaming around, but it feels like a political environment. It feels like a political discussion. It feels like a realistic area. And it's so adult. And I don't want to be skeptical, but I don't know if all these geeky fanboys who are in love with, you know, who are apologists of the elements of the first one are ready for that, you know, for a more adult take.
They should be, because they're most likely 30 by this point.
That's what I'm saying. But hey, like, you know, I like I said, Last Jedi was a start. I don't think they'll go the Game of Thrones route with straight up. Imagine
if they did, though.
Well, if they did that, it'd be like there'd be boobs everywhere and everything. So they can't go.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, they can't go full on Game of Thrones, obviously. But I feel like you're gonna. I mean, it's just the creators.
Yeah.
But you're probably going to see a little bit of that, so...
Sounds interesting, but also wake me when Rian Johnson wants to make his trilogy.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm actually legit excited for that.
I'm jazzed, yeah. That should be good.
We'll wait and see. Anyway, 2 sequels to hit movies that you and I both like to an extent are started filming this year. It Chapter 2 and John Wick Part 3.
Chapter 2, I think a lot of people are gonna, because people were mostly positive on the first It.
I was.
I was mixed to positive. I liked the introduction. I never read the book, but I liked the introduction of characters. I liked it paid a lot of good homage. It was still a good horror movie too.
It had good characters.
And I think it was a really ingenious idea to divide it into 2 chapters.
Because that was the thing that worried me, because I saw the trailers for the It, and I thought it was just going to be the straight-up adaptation, like the whole book, and I just saw the moments with the kids, and I'm like, wait, where are the adults? Now, now the fact that they're making... You're right, the fact that they split it up, because it's not always a cash grab. Like, I'm one of the people who thinks Deathly Hallows did the best job they could have under the circumstances.
Yeah.
But It Chapter 2, there is the little thing we're going to have to... they could subvert our expectations, but there is the little fact that pretty much every Stephen King fan is in agreement that the adult part of It is where the story goes downhill.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So an entire movie dedicated to that, it could be like mediocre or whatever.
I haven't seen the 90s It either, so...
I did.
My opinion's a little skewed, but based on what I've seen, it sounds like if they build up the emotion right, they build up the fear and the tension enough, I feel like they could pull something off. It just depends on how they decide to approach it.
Yeah, I think they're getting Andreas Muschietti to come back and do the next one. And
'Cause-
and you know what? I was really doubtful about the first It. I'm like, what, the guy who directed Annabelle, I think, or wrote it or whatever.
Yeah.
What, he's coming in and doing this? Oh, it's gonna blow. But you know what? I thought he did a pretty damn good job.
I was surprised. I was actually emotionally invested in a lot of the kids'
Yes,
backstories.
absolutely.
So I think if they take that same dedication and then they try to, add to it
Yeah.
without, going full blown, hardcore. I just hope they don't lose their heads and they try to make it, even scarier or something.
Yeah, trying too hard to top themselves.
Exactly. So I hope they just
Yeah.
know what they're doing.
Yeah. So it should be interesting. But
Yeah.
as far as John Wick 3 is concerned, I don't need to know what it's about. Keanu Reeves shooting people in the head with excellent camera work and editing.
Oh man, I watched the first 2 John Wicks only once, but I saw them back to back 2 nights, and it was just one of the most fun experiences I've ever had.
Yeah,
it's literally just like the plot is so irrelevant. I think they know that though. I think they know
Because
pretty much.
John Wick had especially I remember the first one had a lot of it was almost like Scott Pilgrim with the little graphics that would come up and everything.
It doesn't even bother with the backstory that much. It jumps so quickly into the main plot of his dog dies and then he's out to kill that they literally just went full on. This is what we want, and it works. It pays off so well. Same with John Wick 2.
Agreed, because so far I'm glad that we're actually getting a solid action franchise out of this, sort of like The Raid, because let's face it, there's always the series of great action movie followed by garbage sequels like Taken and some of the Die Hard sequels are good, but by the time we got to the 5th one, that was complete trash. And everything after Terminator 3 was garbage.
Yeah.
Or I know everything after Terminator 2. Terminator 3 was garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we're having a trilogy of action films, which we don't know anything about the 3rd one yet, but hopefully it's as solid as the last 2, and we could.
They're kicking ass for sure.
They're kicking ass, and so is Keanu Reeves. It proves that he can finally act well when he's not talking.
Yeah, exactly. He is venomous in that series. I'll tell you right now.
He should have been Venom.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. I would love to see Keanu Reeves try to have a growl voice like that, if that's what they decide to do. But, I like the first Taken. I do admit it's pretty mindless, and I know that's what they were going for.
But it's so is Commando, which is...
But John Wick is a whole new story. I think it's a little better than Tekken, just for the purpose that they're universally relentless.
Yeah.
In the action scenes and just... I don't know how intentional it was, but a lot of those moments just struck me as unintentionally brilliant. Some of the comedic, he has to shoot this guy, he reloads so fast, and then boom, he's dead. It's just so gratifying.
It is. So pretty interested in one, excited for the other.
That's what I would say.
So last year we lost the one of the great horror masters, George A. Romero, and I said, because despite what you thought of Survival of the Dead,
I did not like it at all.
No, a lot of people didn't. I haven't seen it in a while. I actually might go back and have a soft spot for it, knowing it's the last Romero zombie movie we'll ever see. Mm-hmm. Because I always hoped he had one more in him. Unfortunately, he didn't. But there is a book coming out written by him that's being edited and published as we speak, called The Living Dead, and I'm willing to accept that as the last bit of Romero zombie whatever.
Now, is this going to be in continuation of his
No.
Okay.
No, it's a standalone story, and get a load of this. From what I understand, it's about 3 different time periods that are dealing with the zombie crisis.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's almost kind of like
Cloud Atlas, but with zombies.
That's kind of extremely unique.
Yeah, of course it's unique.
I always took the Of the Dead franchise as different time periods of the same outbreak going on. Like, the Night of the Living Dead's the beginning, Dawn of the Dead's the main colossal, and then Day of the Dead's kind of the aftermath. Land of the Dead's like years later. So
that's what makes it interesting though, because I never got the sense that it was the same apocalypse. Believe it or not, I mean,
oh, really?
I think Land of the Dead is directly tying with Night of the Living Dead. You're right, where it's been going on for a long time, but you have to stop and think about it. If they were the same apocalypse, Day of the Dead acts like the outbreak was recent, but that would have been like several decades later, late 60s, mid 80s, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it could have been still going on fiercely though. So
I think what I got out of the movies is that they mostly stand alone and they represent each time period they're made. Like Night of the Living Dead was the 60s, where it was still like black and white, kind of a chiller vibe of a classic horror movie with gore in it. And then Dawn of the Dead was like about 70s consumerism. And then the 80s was like, basically by that time it got to nihilism, where they're basically like, fuck authority, they're assholes.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that trips me up is because what made the other films great is a little bit of cheesiness and having fun, and that's what kind of was missing in Survival of the Dead for me, was that they didn't really, there was no emphasis on like, because in Dawn of the Dead, man, they're like they're pieing people in the zombies in the face, dude.
That is something I miss. Then again, Day of the Dead didn't have much, Day of the Dead was pretty dark too, but I do miss the playful side of Romero, like the Romero side that made Creepshow and Night Riders.
Oh, I know. So I'm not expecting all that. There's a lot of 70s cheese in that too. But that's to me what makes it great. I mean, horror has to have a little bit of comedy, If you take it too seriously, it's just not fun.
One of my favorite horror movies is An American Werewolf in London, and I almost consider that like a unconventional romantic comedy.
No, definitely. So, but no, I have confidence in this. I like the premise a lot, so I'm hoping that they take full advantage of this opportunity and we can actually get something great out of it. And I think to honor his memory, that would be fantastic. So
yes. Okay. Next we have Sicario 2,
which I haven't seen the first one yet.
Yeah, the director, who's not Denis Villeneuve again. It's Stefano Salima, who I'm not familiar with. But the reason I bring this up is two things. One, I wanted to talk about Sicario 2 a little bit, and one, they're still talking about doing a Call of Duty movie, and he's the first director that they've chosen, I guess.
Really?
The thing about Sicario 2 is I find it a little odd that there's going to be a Sicario 2, because Denis Villeneuve made the first movie, and it was very, very good, but it's not franchise material. I didn't get that vibe from it. I mean, to be fair, on his part, he's the one who gave us a Blade Runner sequel.
Well, I mean, in Hollywood, anything is franchise material, I guess.
But in the fact that they're actually calling it Sicario 2, I can't help but feel like that's like making a sequel to, I don't know, Denis Villeneuve's other Enemy or something like that.
Or Passion of the Christ.
Oh, shit. You shut up.
Oh, man. I can't believe that.
Oh, well, I just don't see it, but, we'll see what they do with it. But, yeah, the Call of Duty movie. I feel like I'm to that point where
that is a fucking, in my opinion, a sellout. Like you make you make a game every day or every freaking year that fans buy into is one thing, but really a war movie called Call of Duty, like you're not like, unless they have something original, which I haven't read up on it yet, but you're literally just banking off of they're doing the 2016 Ghostbusters. They're banking it solely off, they're relying their success solely off of the name alone.
That is true. I don't. You're right. If we got a Call of Duty movie that was played like a dramatic sense, it would just be, we would just say, hey, this is Saving Private Ryan. This is We Were Soldiers. We've seen all this before.
Man,
now, Movie Bob actually said something. I think he either made a video about it, I want to say, or he either said it on Twitter. He said it once upon a time, and I agree with it. That the way to make a unique Call of Duty movie that doesn't blend in with the crowd is to honestly go the actual video game route. Go all hardcore Henry and make it in first person, and not like an insane action movie. Actually take us step by step through military training, how it, driving a tank. That could be interesting.
That sounds really interesting,
It's-
actually. That'd be really cool. I mean, because let's face it, like, war movies, I don't want to say they're dead or anything, but it's it's hard to make one unless it's based on like an event or something, or based on a factual
like
event.
Dunkirk and Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah, Dunkirk was extremely well done.
You're right. I think movies that are just made to show us the war, I think we're past that point.
Yeah, I think we've seen our people talk about like, oh, you haven't seen enough of the Korea War or something like that, or World War One. There's not enough World War One out there. I'm just like, well, I mean, I just don't think that there's just enough potential there.
Well, because World War One was, there's been like movies like Joy X Noel, which is not about World War One because it's about It's about a battle of World War One that that halted. Yeah. If you've seen Joe X Noel, go see it. It's fantastic.
Definitely. Like I just don't want to see them try to milk every little bit of war material that they think is worth it when it's really not. It's at this point it's mostly spectacle, So. I did think American Sniper was great, though.
I did not, but yeah, we've been there.
But that could work.
Although I have to say that I am to that point where I'm pretty much calling it quits with video game movies. I don't think I feel like you can't just, because they started in '93 with Super Mario Brothers and they've just been bad, if not worse, since. You can't always blame bad luck. I feel like there is a reason they've never worked.
I don't think I just think they should be separated. Separation of video games and movies. Not all of them are terrible, but...
And even ones that they're talking about, like an Uncharted movie or a Last of Us movie, those movies are practically movies themselves.
Last of Us does not need to be made a movie. It basically already is a movie.
And it's a great fucking game.
It doesn't... You're just watching the movie. You'd be watching it, except you're not playing. That's the only thing that's taken out. But it barely phases you. So it's irrelevant.
That's why you see so many best video game movie lists, or movies that aren't adapted from a video game, but they're based on, like, they have that style, like Scott Pilgrim, Hardcore Henry, Tron, you name it.
I think that movie Bob idea could potentially work. Because Hardcore Henry is.
Awesome.
Is mindless. It's mindless spectacle though, which is fine.
Yeah, sure. And I loved it for that. But you're right. If they could make a more grounded look with that style, and even have the main character talk, if you wanted to, because the characters in Call of Duty are always mutes. But you don't. Well, actually, no. I take it back. Not since Black Ops, where they developed the story a little more.
I don't know if that's gonna sit well with audiences personally, though. That's gonna.
But if you want to make it unique and not bland and terrible.
Yeah, that's true.
Because let's face it, this is just riding on a fad that was already like passé like 3 years ago.
Yeah, true. It's just that Hardcore Henry was so unique, and I just don't want them to get this idea in their head that they should start milking this first person idea hardcore when it comes to movies. That's all.
Yeah, that's agreeable, but I guess we'll see what they do with it. Again, no matter how much we hate something, we can't stop it.
Yeah, that's true.
And and everything we just said especially applies for this last one. Yes, people, Chris Columbus is in talks of doing the Five Nights at Freddy's movie.
Is there anything he'll say no to?
He's yes, you're right. He is an eclectic filmmaker because he's the kind of director who's a straight shooter, comes in, does the thing you want him to do. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like, Matt Reeves is also an eclectic filmmaker, but I pretty much liked everything he's done.
But Chris Columbus used to not be like that. He used to actually have his own tone, his own range of movies, The first two Harry Potters, Miss Doubtfire, Home Alone, like, those all had their own...
I would argue that, the fact that he directed Home Alone 2 and admits that it was phoned in, that should tell you something.
Yeah, but but his movies always were distinctive Chris Columbus movies. If you told me Pixels was directed by Chris Columbus, or when you told me that, I was I was like, what? No way. Like,
Yeah,
that just...
it definitely doesn't have that, because I feel like you're mostly talking about with his family comedies. I would agree with you, but I would say ever since Harry Potter, he's gotten up to what I'm describing.
Well, was Percy Jackson?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and the Lightning Thief.
Yeah,
which that franchise never took off.
I know, but that still has a little bit of Chris Columbus written over it. I just don't. Five Nights at Freddy's, that just doesn't mix to me.
Yeah, now, okay, we're just talking about Chris Columbus, but let's talk about why fucking Five Nights at Freddy's should just go the hell away already.
Yeah, no, it's definitely overhyped. I played it once or twice. It's a fun little indie game, but I don't know why it's getting this mad hype that it does.
I agree with that because I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of games that, you're right, are like just indie horror and made really cheap, but it's like, hey, it's got this secret lore that keeps fans coming back. It did work for me with Doki Doki Literature Club, but you know, and I'm not even that fan of that type of game. That game fucked me up, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about how Five Nights at piece of shit Freddy's is just
lore.
I feel like Chris Columbus, I don't even think his style fits that. I said when they announced this movie, this is like the Angry Birds movie again, that's the way to say it. But I would say, okay, maybe get someone like Sam Raimi or Michael Dougherty who makes like fun horror like comedies kind of, because I would, or you know, something like that, because I would hate for this, because yes, there's that trailer for Slender Man that's been out, and that
looks horrendous.
And that makes it like, oh no, this is 100% serious and dour and moody, and I'm like, no, this is a terrible idea, but don't also bore us.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not looking forward to that.
I don't know what you can do with Five Nights at Freddy's outside of just a guy trapped in a. Why does it? Like, a guy trapped in a fucking, like, pizza joint, why doesn't he just leave? I know why the game doesn't allow you to do that, but, like, if we were taking this seriously, why doesn't the guy just leave?
Yeah, that's why I don't think it works, and people are talking about it as lore in Five Nights at Freddy's, like...
I've honestly read up on a little bit of the lore. It makes no sense.
But what, like, because they say, like, oh, there's pictures in the room that give away little details of, like... That's previous people or something.
That's what they do to keep fans coming back and playing the same game 5 times at Freddy's.
I'll personally, I'll tell you a horror movie that if it got made into a movie, I'd be extremely fascinated is Amnesia.
Yes.
Because I don't know if you've read the lore for that, but it's
extensive.
Fascinating.
It really is.
So in-depth. It is so detailed, and it is fascinating.
I agree.
Like, I have...
And that game is also shit-your-pants scary.
It's fantastic, though. I've read every tiny little note and booklet in that game, and it scares me every time, but it is unique. It really is. I mean, what... I don't know, man.
No, I agree with you.
Whatever makes a buck, I guess.
Yeah.
Because this will probably do freaking amazing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a bit of unfortunate news, but let's keep positive, because now we're getting on to our review of Black Panther, which we saw a few nights ago. I thought it was great. I
really thought it was great. I think Marvel is a step in the right direction. I think this is their best movies. Well...
Best. I thought you were going to say best movie, period. I don't know about that, but it's top 5.
Because I was going to make a point about how they've been off the wall for a bit, but honestly, they've been stepping their game up a lot lately.
Yeah, I thought they might have been off their ball in, like, 2015, where we got, like, Age of Ultron.
Which I really liked.
Age of Ultron, which I was, like, so on, and then Ant-Man, which was, like, alright, but then they gave us, like, Civil War, which was, like, fantastic.
Yes, oh, man. Civil War, dude, blew my mind.
And then they gave us Guardians 2, which I'm in a minority, I guess, of people who liked it more than the first one.
I like the first one more.
And now we have Black Panther. I'm noticing this a lot with Disney, which I don't see this, which half the people, I'm not going to get into the fan reactions of any movie ever again after what happened to Last Jedi.
Yeah.
But, I will say this is another half where people see putting modern day social commentary into their superhero movie as a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I don't, because it tells me that Disney's been accused of just making fluff for the kiddies, and it's, you know, it goes in one ear out the other, it's bland and whatever. It's like, okay, they've listened to you, and now they've made movies like Zootopia, which was like a great allegory for, you know, prejudice, and then Moana went out of its way to like actually study Hawaiian culture, and Last Jedi also had like, you know, all of its themes in there that people have already talked about to death, and now Black Panther, I think film critic Hulk described it as it's Marvel's Do the Right Thing, which he's kind of right.
Yeah, exactly.
So the fact that these movies are coming out more with a little more on their mind than usual, I don't see that as a bad thing.
No, exactly. I mean, I don't think too many people disagree. It's getting absolutely praised. I think #1 best movie on Rotten Tomatoes is a little bit of a stretch, but
I feel like the Rotten Tomatoes era might be coming to not an end, but a different kind of era, because people are, ever since like fucking DC and Suicide Squad, people have really taken a chainsaw to Rotten Tomatoes, and you know, whenever it says something's good or bad, but you know, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as Black Panther goes, this is one of the first movies where, and not just because of the hype it was getting, where I actually felt inspired by the culture it was presenting. The
way it sets up its
African culture,
its fictional,
traditional.
Its fictional world presented in Africa, which, by the way, I think we are seeing early Oscar buzz for art direction, makeup, and costumes. Yes, absolutely.
It was just exquisite craftsmanship and direction, and in almost every single category. Ryan Coogler, I need to check out his other films, but because a lot of people are saying he's 3 for 3 now.
Yeah, we saw Creed.
Creed was awesome.
Yeah, we saw Creed and we liked Creed. I haven't seen Fruitvale Station yet.
Chadwick Boseman blew my mind. I liked him a lot in Civil War. I think they built his character.
Yeah, his arc was one of my favorite parts of that movie. They
continued his character in this extremely well, I thought.
Yeah, and I also liked the playful relationship he had with his sister.
Oh yeah, that was so great. I think she's my favorite character in the movie. Actually,
yeah, she was great.
She was really great, and Lupita Nyong.
From 12 Years a Slave.
Phenomenal. Of course.
By the way, I don't want to get off on a Star Wars thing, but I didn't find out till we started recording this that she plays Maz from Force Awakens.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I had no idea.
That either. That's great. I would say the best character of the movie for me was easily Michael B. Jordan as the villain. This is one villain where this is one of the most memorable villains we've had in a while. I mean,
because let's face it, Marvel does a lot of things right, but their villains are usually not one of them.
For the most part.
You can count on one hand the amount of good Marvel Cinematic Universe villains, but you're right. Hate-monger or no, Killmonger.
Yeah, and
Hate-monger.
Without getting into too much spoiler, they build up. He has a backstory involving his father, and they have a nice little scene explaining that, and then they go into his head, and he like has an emotional conversation with him involving their place in the world, and that was just really good. Oh, it was so powerful and inspiring, and it almost made me sympathize with his position.
Now, you can, to me, especially when it comes to blockbusters like this, you can have two types of villains, and this movie manages to have both. One, where you're right, we understand his point of view and it's really emotional, or one that just chews scenery like mad, and we get that with Andy Serkis.
Oh man, he is he and Martin Freeman both are just riots in that, like they always are. Like
Bilbo and Gollum.
Yeah, exactly. Andy Serkis is just will forever be entertaining. But man, it just gets so super intense when he comes back to Wakanda to claim his throne, and they have that battle. The stakes felt so high. I was so engrossed.
That's what I'm saying, because I've heard complaints that it just resorts to action again, like every other Marvel movie, and I'm like, you have to expect that, and this doesn't even have to do with the Marvel formula. It would feel like action blue balls without it.
Yeah.
But you're right. This is the heaviest, most dramatic, and most consequential Marvel movie I think we've ever had.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Because as much as I love Civil War, and I still probably might like it more than this, I don't know. But Civil War did kind of end with, oh, nobody died, they just went their separate ways, we'll see what happens next.
A little bit,
but no, this, even though, a lot of, like, what happens, but it's like, damn, the fight for this world, and it's a really in-depth world, and I think Marvel's done great at that.
They capitalized on that.
Because in especially the first Thor, it was like, hey, it's kind of on Asgard, but it's mostly about Thor in the desert. But now,
a little bit.
And now thanks to Thor 3 and even Thor 2, for give it some credit, that they actually are fleshing out their worlds more and making it more involved in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Something I hear complain about Black Panther is there's not as much action. The action's not exciting. I think that was an intentional move because there is a bit of a stronger emphasis on CG, but I think the idea was that because the Black Panther is this fast, swift, get the job done super fast superhero, so I think the idea isn't to see him... I don't think the idea is to see him commit the actual punches and all that, but just to see him move around so fast to where they're already been done. And I like because he's so swift, like a cat, like that.
Yeah, like a cat.
And I think it kind of had that element of him extremely well. But I still thought the final action scene, the final battle between him and Michael B. Jordan, a lot of people criticized that one, but I still thought it was. I thought it was really. Still fun.
I thought it was fun with like the rhinos running around and stuff and all that. But I think I liked it for a different reason, because I'll say this: that car chase in the middle of the movie, that was like one of the best car chases.
Every time he used that kinetic energy on his suit move and blew the whole place away. Every time he does that, I just cream myself. It is just too fucking awesome.
Yeah, because I think this, and to a lesser extent, the car chase in the beginning of Kingsman 2, which that movie was like a big mess, but that scene was awesome in that movie, and this scene was awesome in this movie. These are two of the most awesome car chases I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
But I think that ending fight, I think I liked it for a different reason, not just because it was shot fine. There was some dodgy CGI, but I don't really care about that.
Yeah, no.
I was mostly just the emotional punch was there.
Yeah, exactly.
I got what they were it wasn't just Avengers, let's fight the faceless army because it's awesome. It's legit. They're fighting for a reason. Everyone's motivation has been established, and it's all about the stakes.
That's what I'm saying.
This movie has the big... I'm not with those people who may or may not say that it has no stakes.
That's ridiculous. Like I said, the action takes a bit of a backseat, but they do that.
That's fine by me.
Well, the 2/3 of the movie take the backseat on the action because they want to establish the drama and the tension behind these characters, and that way they can have the last payoff where everything's established, everything's riding on this fight, and that's what makes the fight more exciting, is when you know what's at stake. And man, there were just every performance in this just blew my mind.
Yeah, there was no one who did a bad job, and more than the other Marvel movies, I would say, because let's face it, you hire Robert Downey Jr. to come in and be himself and say some snarky lines.
Yeah.
But this is one where, again, in fact, I'll be honest, while watching it, I started to forget that it was a Marvel movie. I thought I was just watching this really good fantasy movie.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That's also that's also has modern day social commentary in it.
They didn't try as much humor either. Like,
I will say you're right. It wasn't as much as like Thor 3, where it was like,
I'm okay with that, though.
Big dramatic scene followed by a funny line. But here's the thing. That's the phrase there. Funny. I thought the jokes, even though they weren't that many, the ones that we do have in Black Panther were kind of flat for me. Like, yes, they quote the what are those meme. I didn't care for that.
Their balls for taking that risk, though, was kind of nuts. But that one scene where I forget his name, but it's that isolated tribe guy that they asked to go for help.
Right.
When he's looking at Martin Freeman, he's like, "You utter one more word and I'll feed you to my people." I'm just kidding, they're vegetarians. And he laughs at his own joke for 15 seconds, and I'm just like, that cracked me up.
Yeah, no, I thought that was funny.
There's not too much of a, of a jab at, or social justice or anything like that. Like they take a few jumps. They refer to Martin Freeman as a colonizer in one scene, but it's purely out of comedy. There's nothing like full-blown anti-white like some might claim it is, so
no, like the allegories are there definitely, but it doesn't bash you over the head with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's subtle. It
I don't know if subtle is the word I would use, but I would definitely say nuanced.
It's a positive message at the end of the day.
Yeah,
they're not trying to promote anything negative.
It's not it's not God's not dead. It's not shoving hateful propaganda down your throat.
Yeah, like the Michael B. Jordan's character, basically he wants to give weapons to Wakanda people and take over the world. Michael, and he's saying we can't do that. These people need our help.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan is not a bad guy. He thinks he's doing good.
Yeah, exactly.
Because part of it's out of revenge, and part of it's out of hey, you fucked me when I was younger, so
yeah. And I think the promotion of this movie has also been ingenious. Like it's just all across the board. It just works so much.
Agreed.
So I loved it.
Yeah, I feel like we could go on for a bit, but you get our hopefully you get what we've been saying.
Okay.
I thought it was one of the better Marvel movies in a long time, and I give it probably since Guardians 2, and I give it an 8 out of 10.
I would go 8 out of 10, definitely 3.5 or 4. So yep.
Good job, Marvel. Looking forward to Infinity War. Definitely looking forward to an Infinity War.
Damn straight.
Yeah. Okay, now let's get into our topic, which is how long should a franchise be allowed to live?
Never. 4, 5, 6. Stop.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people quote with Star Wars. 4, 5, 6. Stop.
Until it, depending on who you ask, the new trilogy, which I'm all for the new trilogy.
I'll tell you right now, I think it's important to milk every possibility in a franchise out until it starts getting dumb. Once it starts dwindling and once it starts getting repetitive, or it's not moving forward in any way, or it's just
what you're describing.
What?
Say it with me now. Transformers.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there should never, in my opinion, there shouldn't have even been 2 of those movies. Because okay, you know what? Maybe if they made another one, because I'll be honest, I have a soft spot for the first Transformers, but I'm not gonna act like it took full advantage of what the cartoon was about. It was just a kind of a fun, dumb summer blockbuster, and then we got 4 more of the exact same movie.
Yeah, no shit.
But shittier and longer and more racist and more unfunny. And so, to me, Transformers could have worked as a franchise if they got rid of Michael Bay and gave it to someone who gave a damn.
Yep. My take is, if the first one is so in depth and inventive and interesting that it ends and it has fans hungry for more, if you have enough potential and enough build up of a world, then that to me calls for a sequel. In my personal opinion, if they made a Hateful Eight 2, I would not be opposed. Yeah. Maybe call it something different, because it wouldn't be a Hateful Eight anymore.
That's what I was saying about Sicario.
I would not be opposed.
For some reason, the fact that they're calling it Sicario 2 bothers me, but, I already talked about that. And you're right, because I agree with you, because Hateful Eight, we're under the opinion that Hateful Eight is one of the just flat-out best movies of the decade, and anyone who says otherwise is, have a right to their opinion. I'm not going to be a dick, but I don't agree.
Yeah,
I love it.
For anyone who's seen Hateful Eight, they talk so much about background history of other people's ancestors and their experiences on the battlefield, and talking about Red Rock and this person at Red Rock and this and that. They're talking so much about the world. It builds a world.
And the fact that it doesn't show it, you just get a sense of what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's so environmental, but I feel like with a sequel, they could expand on that universe, and that's why it works.
But that's the case where it's like District 9, which District 9 does kind of end on a cliffhanger, but it's the kind of cliffhanger where it's like, you want a sequel, but you don't need a sequel.
That's what I'm saying. I know so many animes that, it's ending perfectly now, or Gravity Falls anyway.
Oh yeah.
Where it's ending perfectly now, there's really no need for it but you just want it. And you got that argument that people say that no sequel is necessary.
Yeah.
Sequels are pretty much only made for cash grabs or anything like that.
To me, I think there's one exception, and that's if the movie ends on a cliffhanger, and even then, that has a term. It's called sequel baiting.
Yeah, and I know shows are different, but I feel like even though Gravity Falls almost pretty much ended perfectly, I honestly feel like it wouldn't have been such a big deal if they continued on it. Like, I can't imagine it being such a bad thing if they if they built on it.
Yeah, I agree with that to an extent. Because Gravity Falls did end perfectly.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to Star Wars, I agree that I'm just tackling it right away, right? I agree that Star Wars has an infinite amount of potential for its world.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities you could do with that. It is endless, like comic books, all of that stuff. Like the universe has been expanded to a huge extent. There's so much stuff you could do, but I feel like it's gotten to that point where they're starting to milk it a little bit, and they're starting to run out a little bit, and they're starting to get overly anxious to expand on the universe. They're starting to get overly anxious to
I agree.
Like there's just too many. There's so many Star Wars things going on right now. I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. If it were up to me, I would not pad out the years where it's like, oh, we're going to take a break between episodes, but then we'll fill up those years with spin-off movies. I would not have allowed that decision. Maybe one spin-off movie once in a while, but not every other year.
No, of course not. And honestly, that's why it gets me about these fans who say that they want the movies or the other movies going on to have continuity tie-ins with the comics and the fan fictions and all that. It's like, this is such an infinite universe of infinite possibilities. There are so many opportunities with all these characters and ideas that you could go through. Why would you just want to bank it on content that was already made strictly for comic book purposes? Like, why would you want to limit the universe like that?
Agreed. One franchise that I always thought, this is going to sound weird, but I always thought was underused in a lot of ways is Indiana Jones, because I know what those movies are. Like, the trilogy it basically represents Spielberg and Lucas's more adolescence, because they're like, we're going to make three fun adventure movies before we move on and do more adult things like Schindler's List and Munich. So I get that, but I mean, like, to me, that franchise was always sorely underused. It could have had the potential to be like a new James Bond, where he just goes on a different adventure each time, which is what it was, but we've only seen it 4 times, and the 4th one wasn't well received.
I that could work. I just feel like Indiana Jones, they want to establish him as a character, whereas Bond, he has a different, I don't want to say different personality each time, but like there's no continuity in between his
that is kind of true, because you're right. James Bond has gone through several different actors, but each one gets the suave and, martini sucking guy who's like super awesome. Whereas you're right, a lot of Indiana Jones's personality comes from Harrison's performance. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I wouldn't mind seeing like a Netflix show with a younger actor. I really wouldn't.
That wouldn't be so bad, yeah.
Yeah, but so I guess what we're trying to get is, everyone's aware of this now. Franchises get run into the ground until they have one that bombs.
Yeah, pretty much.
And even then, I would argue, like, they could, like, I feel like if Marvel had a movie that didn't do very well for whatever reason, so what? They got like 2 more coming that'll probably do well.
Yeah, exactly. Like they even if they swing and miss, it's like they'll nail it. They nail it every time or every other time, so they pretty much can't lose in that regard. I think Marvel's at this point is unstoppable, and it's not going anywhere. So I think talking about ending that, well, I mean, I don't know it either. I mean, I don't know where else they could go, but I just feel like like I said, there has to be enough potential as far as new series go. But as far as series that have been going on for a while goes, I feel like they have to create a story. Like, don't,
Yeah.
like what DC is doing.
Oh, God.
Like, they are not interested in the story at hand that they're working on at this moment. They are focused on how this is going to tie in to the universe they are trying to build that it hasn't even been built yet. They're just trying to, that's all they're thinking about. It's like, focus on the movie you're making right now and go from there.
Yeah, that's why I'll be honest, I am a fan of when a movie is a trilogy. I like the self-contained story of beginning, middle, end. And now that can be weird when...
Yeah, they fucked that they're fucking that right away.
Yeah, Spider-Man 3 was the end of that trilogy. And now, because I remember there was talks of Spider-Man 4, didn't ultimately work out, so now we only have 3 movies. And for that, I'm grateful, because it does have, like, at least some kind of conclusion, whereas... I mean, okay, let me put it like this. If Spider-Man 4 did come out, I would say I would be less lenient on Spider-Man 3, but the fact that it's like... Sam Raimi must have felt that that was his last one, so he decided to just bookend the trilogy. So...
Yeah, I think you gotta look at a movie that you make at the start of a franchise, and you gotta think, I want to make this into 3 parts, or I want to divide this story into sections, and that's where the sequels come in, not just... I completed my story, and I want to do more just because.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that's okay. Like I said, if you have potential for expansion, that's fine.
The fact that
I think it's important to take, if you want a story, you have to take it and divide it into sections. Like, kind of what I know Peter Jackson was forced into it, but what Peter Jackson did for the Hobbit trilogy.
That was a mistake to be 3. I think 2 is perfectly fine, but I do think it was a mistake to make it 3 movies, and obviously he did it because he admits to doing it because of pressure and everything.
Yeah.
But
or hell, just the Lord of the Rings series in general. That's one whole story.
Well, those are 3 books.
But it's continuations of the story is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, and to me it can be like now there's certain franchises that to me just exist to be entertainment. Like, I know I bashed Transformers at the beginning of this, but that's because those movies aren't entertaining. They're long and boring and shitty. Jurassic Park, on the other hand, and I know opinions run high about Jurassic World and the upcoming sequel, but to me, those movies, because I'll be honest, I love the first Jurassic Park, don't get me wrong, it's, one of my childhood favorites, and it still is, and I've seen it more times than any other movie, probably, but I am all for these movies, ever since, like, starting with, like, Lost World on, just existing to be like, hey, you like dinosaurs, right? I sure do. Well, here's crazy, stupid dinosaur action for 2 hours, okay.
Yeah, and
I know that sounds shallow of me, but I'm that kind of person who's willing to get behind.
Well, between that and like your desperate attempt to try to compile characters together, we need to get some characters together, and then maybe one guy from the previous movies to be with him, so we can like have some contrived reason to go to this island that we know have dinosaurs on it, and boom, you know, like you're trying too hard. And it doesn't get as fun anymore.
Same goes for Rambo, because there's 4 Rambo movies, but those movies, first one aside, they just exist to be dumb, and the Expendables exist to be like, watch these action stars shoot guns and be awesome.
Rambo was arrested in First Blood, so you could possibly expand on that, but the way they did is probably a little like, we're not here for the character. We're just here so we have a reason for him to break out and we can have more action. That's pretty much the main reason.
And you know what? Since that's what those movies are there to do, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've had 7 Rockies and soon to be 8, and there's like nobody, and there's only really like maybe 2 bad installments.
Yeah. No, the Rocky series, I'm an apologist for them.
Same here to an extent.
An apologist.
Oh, fuck you. I don't have a brother. But here's the thing, because you were saying about, like, no sequels necessary. You're right. There was no reason to make 7 Rockies. They did, and they're in the last, like, 2, Rocky Balboa and Creed 2 looks good. They've all been... The majority of them have been good.
Be confident enough in your if you want to do a franchise, be confident enough in it that you really, really feel like you can expand on it. Don't just make a movie on its own. Oh, this did pretty well. We need to make more now. Like that to me is false. Like, you know, like I said, the Mummy series.
That thankfully was a stillborn.
That needs to, yeah, like even if it did do successful, tell yourself if that would have been a good idea.
I think James Bond is a different story, because it's interesting that with the Daniel Craig, because I hesitated at first. I do consider Casino Royale a reboot of sorts. But here's the thing, they tried to make it like, it's interesting that James Bond could get away with just being the same, let's face it, effectively the same movie every time. Sean Connery or Timothy Dalton or Roger Moore show up, do some spy shit, cool gadgets, cool cars, cool stunts, cool shooting people in the head, and shoot the bad guy and crazy over-the-top villains who want to take over the world. And then when the Daniel Craig movie tried to have continuity with Spectre and Quantum of Solace and actually make it like a franchise like we would have today, it fell completely flat on its face.
Yeah, but I think that was just from bad writing, you know?
Extremely bad writing.
Like, do you think that was a bad idea to do that with Bond in the first place, or just that it was done terribly?
Yes, I actually do think it was a bad, because I prefer the episodic nature, because that's what I was saying about Indiana Jones. You don't need continuity to... You know, that's actually what I like about another good one is the Mission Impossible movies, which each one of those is actually pretty solid, where, again, you don't really, it's like a self-contained story each time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That can work too. Those are the most fascinating, I say.
Now, to me, like I said, but if it were,
the Living Dead series.
Yeah. But again, I'm okay with that. So basically what it all boils down to me is it doesn't matter as long as the movie is good. Mm-hmm. I do think some franchises need to die. Like, the Pirates of the Caribbean is a great example, because, and so is The Matrix, actually, because the first Matrix told a...
Matrix is dead now.
Yeah, well, The Matrix told a contained story with the first one, and then it's one of those trilogies where it's like, oh, well... Because I'm actually not a fan of when trilogies do this, and I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of them do, where the first one tells a contained story that could lead to a sequel, but not really, and then the second one sets up all these different things, and then the third one is what springs off of that, like what happened in the second one. Do you notice that? Like, even if you want to bring in video games, Halo did that with the original Bungie trilogy, where it's like, the first one was like, gotta get off this planet, okay, off this planet, awesome. And then the second one was like, brings in the Arbiter and the Prophets, and then that's what all the third one was about.
Yeah, yeah.
And and, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean did that, because as much as only the first Pirates movie is good, I think Dead Man's Chest is, like, okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, but, I was okay, because I don't like At World's End, because it's too long and it makes no sense, but it's like, okay, at least that was a definitive end, but now they punted. I hate it when franchises punt to 2 other movies.
So, like they final chapter something, and then they keep going?
Friday the 13th.
Yes.
Friday the 13th.
They milked that to the fucking brink. They had...
To the point where it became comical, like fighting Freddy and going into space.
They literally, I think they were doing it for comedic purposes at that point. Like,
yeah.
You have to believe that, like that series could have ended so many times, and calling something the final chapter, and then they kept going. I almost feel like they called it that just so they would die already, but it didn't work. They're like, oh, like Halloween H2O.
Yeah.
Like, that was the end. That was the end. That should have been the end, and not only was there Resurrection, which was a super contrived...
Yeah, Resurrection was like that explanation for how Michael survived a resurrection was so forced, I legit laughed out loud.
And now they're doing another one. And
Okay.
it has Jamie Lee in it again.
Okay.
And I'm telling you right now, no one cares. No one cares anymore.
No, okay. I'm actually going to disagree with that about this new one, because to me it sounds interesting for another reason, because they might... It sounds like they're going to go back and ignore Halloween 2 ever happened. Like, you know, where with Michael being her sister. And you know what? The fact that John Carpenter's actually involved with it, and it actually has a good director, that actually sounds kind of interesting. But at the same time, it is kind of funny.
I'm just tired of it.
No, but it is kind of funny that they're retconning Jamie Lee Curtis's death again.
Yeah. I'm just tired of it, man. I'm just sick of it. Like, I'm sorry, there's no reason a series should be that long.
Resident Evil. I've made my opinion of those movies quite open and clear.
I haven't seen those.
But the fact that we finally got the final chapter, which was to me a sigh of relief of, oh, thank fucking God. But that movie ends on another cliffhanger, or not a cliffhanger, but a kind of like, oh, if we wanted to make another one, we could, because there's nothing really definitive. Fuck those movies. But
yeah, exactly.
Another example is I was just thinking about it. Saw. First of all, 8 fucking Saw movies.
There's no reason a series should be that long unless you're like Marvel. I'm telling you now.
Because, yeah, I'll give Marvel the benefit of the doubt because they have different characters, where Saw was like building on top of each one in bad ways. But then again, Saw the final chapter, oh wait, no, we'll make an 8th one.
The Saw movies are made just to invent more traps. I'm convinced. Like I've seen up to 4, and almost not. Like the 4th one added literally 0 to the continuity. So I'm sick of that.
Yeah, so I think what we're trying to get at is, personally, I'm a fan of when something has potential to have sequels and they tell a contained story, like a trilogy. But I hate when franchises overstay their welcome, and I hate it when they think enough time has passed and they punt.
Yeah, exactly. I think, in my opinion, like, your sequel should be planned, not just, oh, this did better than we thought.
Well,
I guess it's time for a sequel. I mean, and that happens a lot where it works out, too.
No, to be fair, that was Alien and Terminator, with ignoring the shitty sequels that came later. I'm talking about the first 2, where James Cameron made the first Terminator, and then the second one he built on it. No, I don't agree with that. You can like say, like, because let's face it, a lot of movies that do well, Back to the Future ends on a cliffhanger, but if it bombed for whatever reason, we wouldn't have ever seen that sequel.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
So I don't think it's just about this is a lot of it. To me, it's mostly when the sequel sucks. Like, hey, The Hangover was a hit. Let's make 2 of the, or at least one of the worst and most contrived and unimaginative sequels to ever be made. I'm talking about the second one.
Ugh. So bad.
So bad.
I guess it just, because a lot of the time unplanned sequels just turn to shit. Not always.
With that said, you can surprise us, like we said with X-Men, where we kind of thought, like, okay, they're just driving X-Men into the ground, and it's like, oh, is that what you think? Well, here's Logan, arguably the best superhero movie of this decade.
Yeah, that's true. Like I said, it can work depending on who's involved, but I just feel like that's always risky. So
yeah, it's always risky. So
in my opinion, focus more on the movie at hand before you think about it as a franchise. And DC. I'm just kidding. Not just DC. But.
Not just DC, but they're like to me the biggest culprits of that.
Yeah, the movie at hand comes before the franchise.
And Sony, where they made like one really mediocre Spider-Man movie, and then they're like, okay, we'll have a piece of shit sequel that just exists to get our plans out there for the spin-offs.
Yep, and then their plans never came into force.
Never came into effect. That to me, what happened to the Spider-Man franchise, done by Sony, that is, was almost too good to be true, because to me, Amazing Spider-Man 2 represented everything wrong done with Hollywood, and I'm glad that their plans to do what they wanted just, like, fucking just died.
Yeah, I hear you, definitely, so...
And I think the last one I'll before we get into our review of the movie, I feel like the last thing I'm gonna say is Last Jedi. I'm gonna bring up Last Jedi one last time because I thought what it did, where if we're gonna keep making Star Wars movies, I know they don't have to, but you know, they didn't have to make. Star Wars was a self-contained story, A New Hope. They didn't have to make Empire: Return of the Jedi, so no sequel. You're right, no sequel needs to be made. But Last Jedi came down and said, if this franchise is gonna survive, we gotta let go of our grip of the past and push it into this new direction. And I thought it did a phenomenal job of it.
Yeah, it's not really saying fuck the past. It's saying you preserve it, you pay homage to it, but we need to look at the future. Really. Yeah. So yeah.
And I still don't understand how so many people miss the boat on that. Like Luke, that's what Luke's entire final monologue was about. But okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not getting into that circle jerk.
Yeah.
Okay, now on to our movie of the week. So, War for the Planet of the Apes is what we were just talking about. Hopefully, the last bit.
It is.
The last part of this trilogy that started with Rise and Dawn and War. And yes, I'm also of the opinion that those titles are mostly right. I feel like they should have switched the titles of Dawn and War, because there's no war in War for the Planet of the Apes. I mean,
yeah, that was part of its marketing too. It was marketed as a war movie.
yeah, it just showed the action scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
Which there are few and far between.
Believe it or not, that actually knocked a few people for a loop. Like, a lot of people were disappointed that it wasn't a monumental apocalyptic film, but I'm not complaining too much because I think the film they gave us instead was much better.
Hell yeah.
It's definitely more of a prisoner of war movie.
I guess you could argue that. I mean, I agree with that in the context of the film, but I guess you could agree that that is what the title is representing.
Yeah, exactly. It's possible.
But I will say that, can I just say that, wow, this trilogy, fucking wow.
Yeah,
That... Right, because Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes was not good, and I'm one of those. I don't think it's irredeemably bad, but it's definitely bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see this Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and we're thinking like, oh, okay, they're gonna try to reboot this again. Okay, we'll see. I don't remember it being met with skepticism, but it was like, okay, I guess if you have to.
Yeah,
Rise
kind of came out of nowhere.
It kind of came out of nowhere, and I feel like it was the sleeper blockbuster of that year, if that makes any sense, because it wasn't hyped like Thor, or Captain America, or even Cowboys and Aliens, but it was the best movie of that summer, and by far, I thought.
No, definitely.
And because all three of these movies are not about the action, and they never have been. And this is just about this trilogy. This is going all the way back to the original movie. It's never about the money shots and big awesome explosions. It takes time to explore the depth and characters and science morality first.
Yeah, exactly. I think it definitely pushed on the older franchise a lot better by doing that. I think this is one of those trilogies that feels like the most perfect 3-part trilogy ever. You got the beginning, you got the midway piece moments.
That doesn't just exist to be a placeholder.
And the ending of, or not the ending, I would say the second half of Dawn is what instigates. They're so interconnected because the second half of Dawn that ties into pretty much all of War for the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Like Koba, his actions of waging war against the humans
At the end of Dawn.
Yeah, that ties into the whole movie. That's what the whole movie of War is the war against the humans.
And it's brilliant because, like I was saying, where a lot of trilogies I've seen like just place all their eggs in the second basket and let that sprout into the third one. Whereas, because Koba, you're right, Koba did start the war at the end of the second film, but we saw exactly why in Rise.
Yeah, exactly. It made sense to him.
We saw him in Rise where we saw him being mistreated by doctors.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that's why I think this is one of the best trilogies, probably since Toy Story.
No, definitely.
Oh, that's one we missed out. Toy Story 4. It's Pixar and Toy Story, so it has like a 90% chance of being good. But if I wouldn't take the risk.
No, I wouldn't either.
You're right.
We'll see.
But okay, we're gonna talk about that.
It threw me for a loop though. The war threw me for a loop a little bit when I found out that it's all based around just one concentration camp. That's basically what it is. Instead of being an all-out war for the planet, But I feel like that would have been just a little bit overbearing, so
yeah.
It took me a little bit of time to let it sink in what I was really getting into. And I think the more personal, confrontation with the commander played by Woody Harrelson in the camp, I think is a lot more of a payoff, so...
Yeah.
It took me some time to get into it, but I definitely warmed up to it.
Yeah. 2 words. Andy Serkis.
Yes. Oh my God. I don't know if I want to spoil.
Yeah, we can go ahead and do spoilers.
Spoiler alert for whoever. If you haven't seen the movie, you should if you haven't.
Yeah.
When he kills Caesar's son and mother, and he embraces his surviving son in his arms, just the look on his face.
Yeah.
Just captivates emotion. I did. I cried in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
So mind-blowingly emotional, and it paid off so well. And it was just shocking. It was just such a shocking way to open. And it does a good job of establishing this villain, because you don't know much about the villain. You just he gets talked about. That's pretty much it.
Once again, you get...
As soon as it happens, you immediately know all you need to know about this villain is that he is a fucking evil douche.
Well, that's what I liked about this one, and probably why it's my favorite of the 3, and honestly my favorite in the entire franchise since the original, is because the weaknesses of Rise and Dawn were those characters who are just there to be wrong-headed, just there to be, a jerk or stubborn.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we have Woody Harrelson, who seems like that at first, but then he goes into this long monologue about why he's waging war against the apes.
Yeah, exactly. And once you find out what it is, it's actually kind of creepy, his motivation. He's talking about murdering his son, and you're just like, fucking hell, like you think he's crazy, but in reality he's just terrified. He's just scared.
That was actually the conflict of one of the other movies. I want to say it was Escape, the one where they go back in time to the 70s, where again there was
Escape.
There was one where the conflict was like, hey, these apes have the potential to wipe us out. What are we gonna do about it? And I feel like that's what's going on here. That's what makes the movie such an emotional wall-up, I would say, is because the movie at times almost makes it feel like, hey, maybe they can work something out, but then you're like, wait, no, that can't happen because it has to lead to Planet of the Apes the way it was.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where you just don't know how to win because you don't know whose side to take almost, but I'm sorry, but then you got those moments where, apes are being tortured in the concentration camps, and that stuff is fucking gritty. It is unpleasant. Like apes getting whipped, tortured, and beaten, and, they're starving them. It's like any animal lovers out there, hardcore animal lovers, is probably going to hate this movie.
Or at least, cry terribly.
Oh, yeah, it's so wrapped up in emotion, but...
Yeah, that's what I thought. I called it an emotional... When we originally saw it, I called it, it's almost emotionally draining, because it is a long movie.
Yeah, it's one of those movies you're glad you saw it and you love it, but it's you don't feel good after watching it. You're just kind of in a depressing mood afterwards.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, despite it just being a torture device movie and all that, the action, when it happens, is still kick-ass, I would say. It's still super realistic, super gritty, and super. I mean, even for PG-13, it just
Yeah,
it really nails
there's
it.
not a whole lot of like cutting away to not show blood or quick cut action. Like Matt Reeves, who directed Cloverfield, he because despite what you think of the first Cloverfield, I thought the camera work in that movie was actually, despite how shaky it did a good job of showing enough of the monster to not get a full view and everything. So I feel like that's the same thing here, where it's not like it's shot well, is what I'm saying. It's shot
extremely well. Cinematography was great.
Cinematography was great, and oh my gosh, the motion capture technology just keeps getting.
They stepped their game up.
It keeps getting better every year, and honestly, I feel like the perfection has come, because I noticed when there were close-ups of Maurice, the orangutan, I could almost count the hairs on his face.
I know, it's mind-blowing. And one thing this movie does that I like, because I'll admit it, I love Rise, but some of the callbacks in Rise to the earlier franchise, like the "Get Your Hands Off Me" and all that, some of that shit is so forced.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But they meet this little girl who's mute. And
oh yeah,
like as the first thing I thought about is the chick in the first war, and as soon as like there's a moment where he gives her Maurice gives her some kind of gem or something, and it has the word Nova on it, and I thought that callback was actually really fucking sweet.
Yeah.
I thought that was so sweet.
Yeah, it was, because, first of all, that character in general, Nova, was, I honestly, you know what I see her as? I see her as Dakota Fanning from War of the Worlds, except she can't talk. Thank God.
Yeah, pretty much. She does remind me a lot of Dakota Fanning. I think she's adorable, though.
I thought that actress did a great job. And even some of the other side characters, like Bad Ape, which...
Oh, yeah, Bad Ape. They meet this ape that's not part of he's not part of the resistance, but he can still talk, but he escaped from like a zoo or something, so that he's referred to as Bad Ape because that's what his humans used to call him when he did something wrong, I guess. So that's all he's ever been told he is Bad Ape. But he's pretty much the comic relief of the movie.
He's the comic relief, and I can see how and I still think some of his moments are comedic moments are misplaced, but I don't think I'm with that camp who should have cut him out altogether, because without him, first of all, the character's so engaging, I thought.
Yeah, exactly. I think his backstory is surprisingly interesting.
Yeah, but without him, the movie would just make you want to kill yourself.
I know, like a movie that dark and depressing, you gotta have something to lighten moods. You just have to. Now, is it misplaced sometimes? Absolutely, but I'm sorry, when Maurice is hinting at him to climb on his back, he's just like, "Oh no, oh no!" Like that part just cracks me up. It just does. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm not a big old sourpuss like some people.
Yeah, some people.
I thought he was funny. So, but
yeah, I liked him a lot.
Technical wise, the movie was just technically masterfully crafted.
Yeah, like I said, the motion capture technology just keeps improving over time, because it actually started off in a pretty good place with that. What was it? That Final Fantasy movie, which we're talking about video game movies. That one's all right, but
I forget what it's called.
It was called like the Fantasy Spirits Within or some
Spirits
shit.
Within, yeah. I
yeah,
think.
And then but the motion capture technology was actually considered like groundbreaking for the time, and now it's just improving, each time. Cause
man, I love Caesar's design so much.
Yeah, and not to mention Caesar himself. By this point, we followed him from Rise. He's just a compelling character. He really is.
Yeah, he's so confident. He's so strong in every.
But he's also has to be like confused, because I noticed a lot of in Dawn. I noticed a lot of conflict where do we trust the humans? Do we take action? And then in War, he just has to look determined, but also emotionally fucking dead.
Yeah, exactly. Like when he's sitting in the camp, he's just starving and freezing, and they're hanging him on those. Hanging him like a scarecrow, he just looks so out of it. And that one scene when Nova enters the camp and the other apes call her over so they can give him food. Like, that kind of dedication and emotion in that is just, it just enlightens me for the movie. It's just so, it just has so much emotional payoff and build up in it that just, I just love it.
Yes. I think what impresses me the most, and you know what, I think this is what we'll end with, because, like I said, this is a reboot of a series that already was a pretty good series in its own right. Like, the sequels to the original, at least like a handful of them, are actually really good and overlooked.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, Battle is the only one I pretty much don't like.
yeah.
Even Beneath, I think, is fine.
Yeah, Beneath is interesting. But, the fact that this could not only make a good movie with Rise, but also make some of the most consistently good blockbusters that don't get bogged down with studio notes and don't get like, oh, you gotta put that in, or it's gotta have these action beats. The second one had a little bit of that, and that's why I actually think it's the worst of these. Not by much, because it's still great, but...
With Dawn?
Yeah. And now this one, the fact that they can, what we were saying before, just have a solid beginning, middle, end, and this does feel like a declarative ending, definitely to Caesar, because this whole trilogy has been about following Caesar, and now he dies at the end. So
yeah, exactly. I think that's why I definitely hope they don't make another one.
Yeah,
there's just no reason. This is the perfect ending.
And it set the stages for Planet of the Apes perfectly, with the humans becoming mute and more primal.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's really not.
It will be a Planet of Apes. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I feel like the only thing to do, and I'd prefer they don't do this, but if they feel like they have to, I don't want them to punt. But I feel like the only bit of unfinished business is to make another Planet of the Apes, like the astronauts find the apes way in the future. But it has no characters like we came to love over the course of these 3 movies, so I don't see why they should.
I can't see that. I think this is just they rebooted it. It's a successful series. I think it's time to hang up the cape for the title Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
For me, anyways.
With that said, the movie was devastatingly effective. Fantastic acting from Andy Serkis and everyone. Nobody does a bad job. Seamless visual effects. Great cinematography. Great moral discussion. I give it a 9 out of 10.
I would go 8 out of 10 for me.
Okay. And
but yeah, still phenomenal.
Yeah. So yeah, War for the Planet of the Apes. Great series of movies. Thank you, Fox, for making them. That's one thing you didn't fuck up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, with that said, I think we're about done here.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's. Yep.
Yep. See you next time, guys.